Hey, what's up? Andrew Kramer here, videocopilot.net, and welcome to another very exciting tutorial. And I actually mean it this time. All those other times, yeah, well this time, I'm not messing around. So what we're going to be doing is using a new preset called 3D Falloff. And what it allows us to do is put layers in 3D space and have them fade away in the distance. So in this example, we have a red background. So our layers in the background are sort of faded away red, and as we approach the background layers, they become clear. So if we keep an eye on this area, and as we back out, it fades off into the distance. Now, in After Effects, there's not really any good way to do that, except maybe keyframing the layers. But if you do it that way, you're going to have to keyframe, lots of layers. In this case, there's over 50 layers that represented by this animation, and that would be kind of a lot of work. So the preset automatically calculates the distance from the layer to the camera. So more specifically, I've created a chart here. So here's the camera, and I know what you're thinking. That's a pretty detailed camera. It's got like a battery, a side compartment, and a lens. I mean, we don't mess around. Here's the idea. The visible area is when layers are perfectly clear to the camera. Now, at this point, this red line, that's when the images begin to fall off. And then here is where they end fall off. So between here and here is when the images begin to fade away into the background. And what's great about the preset is that you control where it starts and where it ends. So pull out of there. And in real life, I'll show you an example of that. Here we have these blue hills. This comes courtesy of Windows XP. And you can see the foreground kind of dark, and you can see it fades off into the back. And that's the idea. And you probably noticed this in video games and other kind of things like that. But there's tons of practical uses for it when you're creating cool compositions. So I made another example here. Inspired by X-Men, and we'll take a look at that. So pretty basic. These fade in and fade out, and they all do that without any keyframes on the layers. It's all built in to the Falloff preset, and it's all dynamic too. So if I just move my camera around here and change the angle or do whatever, you can see the layers react accordingly. So if you want to change your animation, that's okay because the layers will automatically update. Now before we begin, what you want to do is download the project for this tutorial. Inside of there is going to be the preset you need to install. Now what you're going to do is go into your After Effects directory, Support Files, Presets, and put the Video Copilot folder inside of the preset folder, restart After Effects, and there you go. Also, you need to run the English version of After Effects. So if you go into the languages, you can launch After Effects English, and that'll make sure it'll work. Now, if it's already in English, you get the idea. You just open the program. I can show you that, but okay, let's go and get started. I'm going to create a new composition. And we'll use the widescreen square pixel comp. We'll make it 24 frames per second and 400 frames long. Choose OK. And what I'm going to do is come into my footage, and I've created this plant object. I don't really know what this is, but we're going to use it. So first thing we'll do is pre-compose it. So layer, pre-compose. And we're going to leave all attributes in the comp. Now, I'm going to go ahead and open that comp. I'm going to Alt double click. And so now we have that file. And what I want to do is go ahead and add a curves adjustment. And we just want to darken it a bit. And maybe add a tint effect to desaturate it. And one other thing we want to do is we turn on the transparency. So we have sort of a sharp edge on the back where it stopped rendering. So we'll just take the pen tool up here, zoom in, And we just want to fake the edge and kind of give it a more of a random edge so that you can't tell where it ends, you know, in the comp once it's with a whole bunch of other layers. So I'm just sort of randomly cutting this up. And then take that mask that we just created and set it to subtract. And you know, it doesn't look great, but that will help us sort of hide that perfect edge. And we'll go ahead and close our comp that we just created. Now let's create a background. I'll make a new solid and choose OK. And then we'll choose Effect, Generate, Ramp, set it to Radial, change the black color to like a red color and the white to black. Maybe move this down a bit. And let's go and create a new camera. And we'll make it 20 millimeter and choose OK. So we have all this set up. Now let's go and get into the preset. This is where the fun begins. We're going to go over here to the Effects and Presets, type in Falloff, and Video Copilot 3D Falloff comes up. Now, here are the specific steps. First of all, you need to have a camera called Camera 1. So when you create a camera, it's always called Camera 1 unless you make another camera. So kind of specifically needs to be Camera 1. Then create a new adjustment layer or a regular layer and call it, hit return on the keyboard and call it Falloff with a capital F. And this is just important to keep the code working. Then we'll take the 3D Falloff control preset, and it reminds you to rename the layer Falloff and drop that right onto the Falloff adjustment layer. And then we have another preset, and we apply these to 3D layers. So we'll take our plant, make sure it's a 3D layer, and apply that preset to the plant. And if you hit U, you can see there's a bunch of code. And don't worry about that code. We are just going to make some adjustments to the Falloff control layer. Very quickly, I just kind of want to go over the parameters. First of all, we have the use color, and that's a toggle that we can turn on or off. We have the Falloff color, the amount to tint, and I'll get into that in a moment, where it starts, where it ends, the distance wise, and then we also have use fade, which will fade a clip out. Like if you see in this example, first of all, as they go off into the distance, they get tinted black, but as they get too close to the camera, they fade out. Now you can also do it to where once they turn black, they also fade out, but it's up to you. So back into this comp, and we have the fade control. So we'll go ahead, shut off the fade for just a moment, and we're going to take these parameters and just toggle them down so we can focus just on the color for a moment. I'm going to change the color to green just so we can see what's happening. And then I'm going to take our plant layer and I'm going to move it back in 3D space. Okay, so you can see as it goes back, it's being tinted green. And if we go back far enough, it turns entirely green. And if we go into the Falloff control, that's where we can control the color tint. Say if we do 50%, then that is the maximum amount. So say you don't want the layers to get too faded out, but just enough to where, you know, they look like they're further off into the distance. But we'll go ahead and keep that at 100, and we'll go and change the color to one of these red colors here in the background, and maybe we'll set it to 75%. So we'll take that layer again and we'll move it forward. And now you can see a better example of it fading into the background. Also, we have the start Falloff and end Falloff. And this is in pixels. So 500 pixels away from the camera is when the clip begins to fade out. And then we have at 2500, it's fully tinted that color. Now, if I set this to say 400 and I set the end to say 600, you're going to see that our layer has a very narrow time that it stays in. So right here, it's clear, and then if we just back it up just a little bit, it's gone. And that's because the range is only 200 pixels between the start and the end. So we extend that, and we can get a more natural looking fade out as the layer goes off into the distance. Now, that's the basic idea. Now, as far as the fade, works pretty much the same way. We'll go ahead and disable the color for just a moment. And we'll take the fade, turn it on, and again, it works pretty similarly. It just fades out into the background. Now, the reason you don't always want to use the fade is because, say we duplicate this and we make a copy of it. If the clip is fading away, so if I just move the camera, you're going to see the layers are going to sort of be semi-transparent over each other. Whereas if you use the color without the fade, they're going to stay composited on each other properly. And in most cases, that's what you want. But okay, back to it. Kind of zoom in here. We'll go ahead and shut the color off again, back to the opacity. Now, the cool thing about the opacity, it has two controls for the fade minimum and the fade maximum. And what that allows you to do is invert the fade. So right now, as they go far away from the camera, they fade out. So if we turn it on, they fade out as they go far away. But if you invert these numbers, so if you change this to 100 and this to 0, what's going to happen is as they get close to the camera, they're going to fade out. Now, this can be used for a whole lot of things. Say you want to create a title scene where you have titles that are going to be flying right in front of the camera, and as you get close to them, they fade out, and that way they don't obscure the camera or cause like a weird glitch. It's a nice way just to be able to control layers to kind of fade them out as you fly through it. Kind of a quick example, if I were to just disable that, I'll take the text tool and we'll type Video Copilot. We'll make it white. You can see it, and I'll make it a 3D layer, and then we'll go back to the effects and presets and apply the Falloff applied to 3D layers preset to the Video Copilot layer, and just scale it up some. So now as the camera goes towards it, it fades out. So what we want to do to set up our scene is make a whole bunch of copies of our plant. So the way we'll do it is we'll go and put this Falloff control layer at the bottom and shut it off. The way we'll do it is we'll take the plant and we'll duplicate that. So edit, duplicate, and then we can rotate it and, you know, push it into Z space. And what I'm doing is toggling the shortcut. So if you hit W, that allows you to rotate layers, and then if you hit V, that switches back to, you know, the move tool. So Control D duplicates the layer. We can move it, rotate it, duplicate, and just we want to make a whole bunch of copies so that we can actually see this effect. And by rotating it, we can kind of give it a little bit more of a random look. And once we make a few, we can hold down Shift, select them all, and again, edit, duplicate. And then using these controls up here, these are sort of like the local axis, global axis. So like local axis, it kind of is relative to the layer. And then if you do global axis, you can see it's relative to the view you're looking at. And that way I can just move them all back. Or duplicate it again and move them forward, you know, offset them, even take the rotate tool and rotate them slightly so that they have a variation to them, and even scale them all up so that some are a little bit larger than others. So as long as they're all selected, you can you know, control those. So once we've created a few, we'll go ahead and select them, turn on the shy switch and click on this button, and that'll just hide it. And you know what I like to do is hide them all but one. And that way if I need to stack layers, I can use that as a reference. So here is our big field. I don't really know what this is, and so I was doing some research and actually found out what it was. You guys know who Elvis Presley is? Well, he's got these sideburns, and so I was doing a little bit of research, and here's what I found out. Shocking, isn't it? You know, who really would have known? You found it first here on videocopilot.net. Okay, back to it. Okay, so again, I'm just going to duplicate a couple more of these and fill the space on the side here, and maybe just rotate this one. And by the way, if you hold down Shift while you rotate, it will conform to, you know, like every 15 or 5 degrees or something, so it's easy to flip it perfectly. Now, going to the Falloff controls. We're going to go ahead and turn on Use Color, and we can see they sort of fade off a bit. And remember, if you use a weird color, something that stands out, it's easier to see where the Falloff starts and where it ends. So we'll turn up the tint amount to 90, and we'll set the start Falloff to 500 and the end Falloff to maybe 2500. And taking the camera tools here, I'm going to kind of just back away. And if I take the orbit camera tool, I'm just going to kind of go above everything. And then I can sort of push my camera through the layers and see how they interact. And this layer looks like it's getting in the way, so I'll just move it out of the way. Okay, so it looks good. Our Falloff is a little strong, so what we'll do is we'll push the start Falloff, so where it begins to fall off close to the camera, and push it back, and that way we get a little bit more detailed before it falls off. Okay, cool. Now we can just set the color back to that red. And I did, just to kind of enhance it, I just did a little bit of a brighter color. And that way it kind of differentiates from the background. And you just want to fill it in, just make more copies so that it looks like it's completely filled in. And you can see we've created a pretty dynamic scene that automatically updates with 3D Falloff. And you can imagine all the different possibilities. And I'll go ahead and turn on the depth of field for the camera. So we'll go down to the camera controls, turn it on, and turn up the aperture and the blur amount, blur level. And using this in combination with the Falloff will create, you know, an even more direct effect for looking at you know, different parts of the image. And then you could, you know, put some titles in there, some different things to kind of enhance the shot. I know one of the other things I did was just add some particles. And the way I did that was just, let's see, simulation, CC particle world, set it to off, and in the physics, so we're kind of flying around right now, and so what you want to do is turn the velocity down to 0.1, 0.05, and the gravity to 0. Back our camera out here, and we want to increase the size of this area, and the birth rate, maybe turn it down, and the particle type to a faded sphere. And so you just get little little particles, and we can turn up the life to maybe 4, and then we have some cool particles. And then we can animate the camera, so hit P, hold down Shift and hit A, set a keyframe, move these over, and just simply take this tool and just fly forward. And then we'll come back and maybe just back it up some more. And we'll go ahead and RAM preview by hitting 0. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. We can also hit F9 to sort of soften the in and out keyframes of the camera move. And one thing I will point out is that I like to animate my camera with a null object, but a null object doesn't transfer its position to the camera's position. And since the expression is based on where the camera is, your falloff won't quite work correctly. So you do need to animate the camera, or if you're good enough at expressions, you can sort of link them together. But that's kind of the basic concept. And maybe real quick, let me just kind of reiterate this design and kind of show you how that was set up. So what I did was take the X-Men layers and just drop them onto a comp, and I just chose these characters because they were the easiest to cut out and use. So we'll make them 3D. We'll make a new background solid. Black's fine. And we'll choose Effect, Generate Ramp. And we'll change it to Radial. We'll make the middle color like blue, dark blue, and black. And we'll put that into the background. And for our 3D layers, hit P, and we're going to offset them by about 400 pixels. So we'll set the second one to -400, -800, and -1200. And we'll create a new camera. That's fine. And we'll take the Z tool and we'll just back it up. And we'll also create our control layer. So here are the steps again for using the Falloff filter. You need to make a solid or an adjustment layer and make sure to name it Falloff with a capital F. Choose OK, and we'll just shut it off. And then the first thing, you want to apply the control layer to the Falloff and the apply to 3D layers to each of the 3D layers. And right away, you can see the layers already begin to kind of fall off. Now, I'll go into the controls, we'll uncheck fade, set the background color to black. And the reason I chose black is because I want it to almost seem like they're backing up into a shadow. Now, we want the start fall off and the end fall off to be very, very narrow so that the layers are only clear for just a moment. And so to do that, we'll bring the end fall off in. So we'll turn this number down. And you can see we're losing the ones in the background. And maybe turn the start fall off up to about right there. So there's only a few hundred pixels in between. And as we push through, the other layers sort of turn on. Now, they're going to hit the camera if we try to go right through them, which is fine. You can just, move the layer over or something like that. But we'll go and use the opacity. So we'll turn on the use fade. And you can see right now, see what's happening is they're fading away as they go. And that's good, except we want them to fade as they get close to the camera. So again, we'll take the minimum and the maximum and we'll invert it. We'll change it to 100 and to 0. And so now you can see it fades as it gets close to the camera, although it fades a little too quickly. So we'll set these values to maybe turn this one down a bit. So that way it starts, and this is the near start, and then the close end. So if we kind of animate the camera here, P, A, animate these two, and we just push through to the end. Maybe even past him. What do you think about that, Professor Xavier? Make it so. I will. Thank you very much. All right, so never mind about that. I love Patrick's dude. He's a good guy. He's got a really cool voice. So just to test, as I go through here, we want to make sure the layers fade out, and it looks like they fade out rather well. So back to the Falloff control layer, and the start and end can be adjusted as you work. So right here, say we want him to be completely faded out. Well, just adjust these until you get that result. And, you know, there you go. And then, you know, again, just you can turn on the depth of field here to give it even a more dramatic effect. But all in all, a pretty powerful preset. And, you know, there's other things you can use it for. It doesn't just have to be motion graphics. Say you want to create a scene with a bunch of army guys in the desert or something, and as they get far away into the sandstorm, they could sort of fade away. Or, you know, the abominable snowman. If there's a big blizzard of snow, he could, you know, be traveling away just before you can get your camera out and take pictures of him. You know, it's not like they will believe you anyway, even if you took photos. You could take video. You could bring him home and no one would believe you. And why would they? I mean, the abominable snowman? You got to be kidding me. All right, well, with a little work, you know, you can create some pretty interesting comps. You know, we've made quite a scene here. That's what my parents told me. Andrew, you're making a scene. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial, and the preset is available on the website, so go and download it. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. Of course, you can download the preset from videocopilot.net. And while you're at it, please check out our new product, ProScores. It's our cinematic music design toolkit, and it includes layered music tracks, you know, orchestral kind of epic music, along with tons of great musical sound effects and elements that you can mix into your own music or create some very cool tracks. So check out the promo and check out the audio demo. It also comes with some very cool tutorials. In fact, there's a tutorial on there for automatically distributing layers in 3D space and being able to control it almost like a particle system. So instead of having to do it one by one, we go into some cool expressions to automate that. So not a bad deal there. Anyway, I'm Andrew Kramer, and I'm glad to be back in the After Effects tutorial business. And, you know, we'll see you guys next time. Now, if all else fails, you know, you can make 2 orbs.